Hello listeners, and welcome to part 3 of the Jared Leto miniseries. I'm your speaker Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast, and originally this series was only going to be in 2 parts, with a focus on the interview that I had with Michael. However, upon releasing the episode and receiving some criticism, I felt it was necessary to take a minute to bring an additional 3rd part to the series and refocus the content on the alleged abuses individuals have endured at the hands of Jared Leto. First of all, I wanted to thank people for coming forward and engaging in conversation with me about this content. There have been mixed reviews, and I've even had the chance to talk with long-time listeners for the first time, which was really cool. Some people have mentioned that the direction the interview takes detracts from the allegations against Jared Leto, and ultimately could either be used as scapegoat material or diminishes the allegations altogether by overshadowing the narrative. I've put some thoughts down here as to why this interview went ahead and why it was conducted the way that it was. The guest I interview for parts 1 and 2 of this mini-series is Michael. Michael emailed me a few months back explaining that he was being sued by Jared Leto. Upon reading further into his notes, it seemed that Michael had some extreme religious revelations regarding a divine encounter with God, who spoke to him directly and informed him of who Leto was and his identity as the Antichrist. I instantly thought about leaving this conversation here because I understood how it sounded to myself and therefore to listeners. However, Michael provided a list of sources and links to allegations against Jared Leto in regards to him abusing people. He also went on to win his court case against Leto. And it was these 2 things that caused me to proceed with the interview. The point that Leto had attempted to sue someone on the internet, who does not really move in celebrity circles and is not known to the wider public, was really intriguing to me, especially as there are celebrities who have come forward to publicly accuse Leto of questionable acts. When I began the pre-interview process with Michael, I expressed my concerns on how his religious experiences and extreme beliefs may cause a certain reaction from listeners, and how I myself, as an atheist, found the story difficult to accept. Michael suggested that we leave that part out of the story, but he mentions his website, his name, and his ministry. We also talk about the lawsuit in the interview, and all of these things are available for people to go and look at on the internet. All of these things talk about Michael's story of divine intervention. And I didn't want to offer Michael the chance to tell half of his story, and to have listeners go to Michael's website and accuse me as a host of only bringing to the episode what I thought was relevant and important. I don't think it would be fair to ask Michael to tell parts of a story that suited my platform, even if the conversation was difficult for me. I also didn't want to be accused of not having integrity or transparency with my interviews or with you as listeners. So, after a few concerned listeners reached out today, including respected podcast hosts who I hold in high regard, telling me that the religious beliefs really cancel out the information about Leto and how it may damage past or future interviews and the way my guests are perceived, I realised I needed to revisit this, look at all of the information on Leto that is available and verified, and bring the focus back to this. Either that or remove the episodes altogether, which is certainly an option and something that I am considering, but I think that the content has still managed to generate some great discussions. So what I've decided to do is take the episodes out of the public podcast feed and set the videos on YouTube to unlisted, where I will put links to those in this episode description and on my website so that you can still access the conversation if you wish to, but it will no longer appear in the public podcast feed. I am appreciative of Michael and his time, and thankful that he was willing to share his story. I do realise, however, that I don't want to be accused of encouraging any type of conspiracy theory or taking away from those who are abused by people in positions of power. Also, in regards to accusations of ill mental health, I'm not someone who is certified to make claims about a person's state of mind or any type of diagnosis. Thank you again to all that reached out to talk to me about this. I really appreciate it, and I can't grow without your feedback. I hope to continue learning from experiences and bettering the podcast overall. Now on to part 3 of the Jared Leto miniseries that aims to look at all of the information objectively. Born on December 26, 1979, Jared Leto is well known in the world of music, film, fashion and festivals. a strange childhood that consisted of his father completing suicide when Leto was just a child, his maternal grandfather being in the Air Force, which meant a lot of moving around and upheaval, and his mother Constance joining the hippie movement in the late 70s, Leto had anything but a typical childhood. Eventually, after being encouraged by his mother to take part in the arts alongside his brother Shannon, Leto enrolled in the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And a funny coincidence here, I've been to this university myself and studied there for a week as part of an exchange program around 10 years ago. In the years 1994 to 95, Leto landed himself the role of Jordan Catalano in My So-Called Life, and by 1998 was starring in films like The Thin Red Line. In 1999, Leto would go on to star in cult hits such as Fight Club and Girl Interrupted, landing his breakout role in 2000 with appearances in American Psycho and Requiem for a Dream. Noted in this role for his so-called method acting when he lost a lot of weight to play the role, locking himself away. In 2013, Leto landed himself a supporting role in the film Dallas Buyers Club, alongside renowned leading actor Matthew McConaughey. Leto steps into the character of Rayon, a transgender woman who has the AIDS virus. This role landed Leto an Academy Award at the Oscars in 2014, although his portrayal of a trans woman did receive backlash and claims of it being stereotypical and unfair. In 2016, Leto appeared in Suicide Squad, where his method acting again became the subject of scrutiny. Although this film did not do too well in comparison to films being released within the Marvel Cinematic Universe at the same time, and Leto being slated for his depiction of the Joker, Leto is still being cast in sci-fi movies and big production companies, including Blade Runner in 2017, and his own leading role in Morbius, in a film of the same name, that actually is a Marvel Cinematic Universe release. Director Zack Snyder did not invite Leto back to reprise his role as the Joker for Snyder's The Suicide Squad, after the Guardians of the Galaxy director took on the project. Perhaps there is more to this decision that we will highlight later on. At the same time Leto received his breakout role, he had also formed a band with his brother Shannon called 30 Seconds to Mars. 30 Seconds to Mars are described as an American rock band that formed out of Los Angeles, California in 1998. Jared Leto contributes vocals, guitar, bass and keyboard, with his brother Shannon bringing drums and percussion. There have been many alterations to the full band lineup throughout the years. The first full-length album, titled 30 Seconds to Mars, was released in 2002. The artwork comprises of a young boy in a white jacket with a phoenix bird patched on his arm. Next to the words 30 Seconds to Mars are 4 symbols that look similar to ancient runes that many have determined to mean 30 Seconds to Mars, although there doesn't seem to be any clarification on this from the band. The album has a total of 11 songs, and it's just under 1 hour long, with track 6 being titled Echelon. In this same year, the band toured with the MTV Campus Invasion Tour. Worldwide fame found the band upon the release of their 2005 album A Beautiful Lie, which contains cult hits such as The Kill, From Yesterday, and a song that shares the album title A Beautiful Lie. They toured a year after its release with Audioslave and The Used, and later the same year on their Welcome to the Universe tour. From this album, the band won MTV Music Awards for their albums and singles. In 2008, the band were caught up in a lawsuit with their label EMI, which was later settled in 2009 after the band signed another contract with EMI. The year following the conclusion of the lawsuit saw the release of a new album, This Is War, which is where the band really seems to focus on the following that they had amassed. With music videos containing what we might assume are droves of fans, they held an event called The Summit, where they invited fans to provide backing vocals and percussion. A notable track on this album is titled Closer to the Edge, which is significant later on. With the album holding 17 tracks in total, it was the longest album to date and was shortly followed up by a 2012 documentary by Jared Leto titled Artifact, which detailed their lawsuit with EMI, winning Toronto International Film Festival and the People's Choice Award for documentary. In 2013, 30 Seconds to Mars dropped the album Love, Lust, Faith and Dreams, where they partnered with NASA to send the first ever commercial copy of music into space, being played on the International Space Station on March 18, 2013. Their most recent album was released in 2018, and this, titled America, received mixed reviews upon release. The most recent work by the band was in 2021 with a single titled Wouldn't Change a Thing. Leto was also appearing at world-famous events throughout this timeline, attending premieres, awards evenings, and even fashion events, including Paris Fashion Week in 2018 and Walking the Gucci Runway in 2021, just to name a few. What is most important to highlight throughout this timeline is that Leto was experiencing high levels of success in all aspects of his career, especially in the early 2000s. And I wanted to put together a coherent timeline in order to go back and pinpoint these moments where allegations have been made. Oftentimes, things have been overlooked, swept under the rug, ignored, or even acknowledged and still not acted upon just because of status and notoriety, fame, influence, money, and power, which sadly has been the story of many abused by celebrities for generations. Some of the earliest questionable reports come from a 2005 New York Post by Chris Wilson, which reads, Jared Leto likes him young. The 33-year-old Requiem for a Dream actor, last seen squiring Ashley Olsen and Lindsay Lohan around town, has been aggressively pursuing many of the teen models shacked up at the Maritime Hotel. Leto, who booked a suite at the Meatpacking District hotspot while he was in town with his rock band 30 Seconds to Mars, has become infamous for calling and texting some of his underage objects of desire several times a day, reports One in the Know snitch. He's been approaching all the girls and inviting them to his shows, snickers the source. Girls from IMG, Elite, Next and Women are all staying there, and Jared has been hitting on all of them. He's a serial texter. He is constantly texting these 16 and 17-year-old girls. It's really kind of creepy. But Leto's digit collecting prowess came up short with 17-year-old elite newcomer Nadia Panchenko at the Maritime's restaurant. The Ukrainian stunner declined to give up her number because she had already had a boyfriend, and the fact that a frowning chaperone was standing right behind her probably didn't help Leto's case. There were even suggestions that Leto had dated both Lindsay Lohan and Ashley Olsen around the time that he was 33 and they were 19. This age gap isn't too shocking, and at least the women were above the age of consent, which wasn't the case during Claire Danes' stint within My So-Called Life, where she was only 14 at the time that she played Leto's on-screen love interest, with Leto being aged 21. Danes was quoted in a W magazine article in 2018 that even though it was the script and production team that concocted this romance, Leto seemed ancient compared to Danes at that time, and he guided her through the romantic scenes. Another thing that happened in the early 2000s, when Leto was dating Cameron Diaz, was an allegation of Leto grabbing a dancer by the neck while she gave his brother Shannon a lap dance. A 2014 article on celebbitchy.com goes over original source material from 10 years ago, which reads, former adult film star Vicky Marie Taylor claims that Jared Leto is very kinky after spending an evening with him in Little Rock, Arkansas. Vicky was appearing at a strip club when a roadie for Jared's band 30 Seconds to Mars, which was playing at a nearby college, invited her and 3 other dancers to a post-concert get-together one night in April 2002. At the time, Jared was in the middle of a 3-year relationship with Cameron Diaz. The other girls and I stripped down to bikinis and hung out with Jared and the band backstage. Vicky, now a mainstream actress, tells Star, after a while, Jared invited me onto his tour bus. His brother Shannon, the band's drummer, was already on it, and the 3 of us were the only people there. I gave Jared a lap dance for just a minute, but then he asked me to do the same for his brother, who was sitting on a couch. As I started to dance for Shannon, Jared suddenly grabbed me around the throat from behind and said to me, I can reach pure sexual enjoyment in 30 seconds just by looking into your eyes. Obviously, it was a weird situation. Jared sat back down and watched Vicky lap dance his brother for 10 minutes, she claims. Then the interlude ended when a roadie announced it was time to leave for their next gig. Jared is one of the stranger guys I've ever met, and at the time, I couldn't stop thinking, is this how he acts with Cameron? 2007 saw Leto's Chapter 27 movie with co-star Lindsay Lohan, where he gained 67 pounds for the role of John Lennon assassinator Mark David Chapman, at apparently such an excessive rate that he developed a gout and couldn't walk. The dramatic weight loss and gain that Leto shows for various roles within his career is where some of the method acting controversy comes from, and it would only worsen throughout his career. In the same year, Elijah Wood, of Lord of the Rings fame, told Jane magazine about an altercation he had with Leto. According to People.com, he was basically upset at the fact that I said I didn't like his band, Wood says. He said that initially and then walked away. I guess he thought I was laughing at him, but I was more shell-shocked and telling people around me, whoa, I just got told off by Jared Leto for not liking his band. And that's when he came back and grabbed me. I told Jared it wasn't personal. He acted like I'd been disrespecting him or speaking about his family. Things like that don't generally happen to me. I'm very non-confrontational. The whole thing was kind of ridiculous. In 2011, it seemed that Leto was not happy with a fan during one of the band's live shows. When he spotted an individual sitting down in their seat during the performance, he publicly called this attendee out in front of the entire crowd, basically forcing the individual to stand up. Leto probably had no idea who this person was and what their circumstances were, and perhaps the person just wanted to sit if they'd paid for a seated ticket. In the video, he seems almost offended that anyone would sit in his presence during a concert. In 2013, the band launched a competition in conjunction with the release of their Love, Lust, Faith and Dreams album titled The Sleepover. The form on their website read, quote, "Pre-order your copy of Love, Lust, Faith and Dreams for a chance to be one of 5 winners who will receive an exclusive invitation to The Lab for a magical night we are calling The Sleepover. Still want more? One of the 5 winners will spend the night at Jared's house in Jared's very own bed. Blog posts from these winners suggest that nothing untoward happened during the sleepover, which took place in a location called The Lab, and that Leto's bed turned out to be a coffin, something that would play a part in Leto's preparation for the film Morbius later down the line. In the same year, the band received backlash after Leto held another competition for fans, this time to get tattooed with the words, quote, "I am the echelon," with pictures of before, during and after the tattoos had healed. The band also told fans to send a video of themselves explaining what the band means to them and why they've had the tattoos done. Echelon is a track on the band's first album, and Leto revealed that this is the name that he gives to his following. He was quoted in 2013 saying, quote, "We've always had incredibly committed people following us. If people like 30 Seconds to Mars, they really, really like it. I hate the word fan, it just seems so dismissive. Because we have this cult, this family, these believers who understand, it seems fitting to have a name to reference them." In the same year, Enter Shikari's Rue Reynolds came forward in a blog post explaining how Leto charges fans up to £575 to spend time with them before and after their performances on a live US tour. Reynolds noted that it was exploiting fans. In 2014, Leto's method acting was called into question, again when he was preparing for the role of the Joker for DC's Suicide Squad. According to Leto's co-stars, Leto sent a number of horrific gifts to each of them. Will Smith on the red carpet for E! Insider talked about, quote, "Jared has gone full Joker, and the rule generally is never go full Joker." Margot Robbie looks uncomfortable in the same video discussing the gifts Leto would leave her. Adewale Agbaji goes on to tell E! quote, "I got gifts which I don't like talking about. A dead pig." And Viola Davis tells Vanity Fair France, available on Daily Motion, that, quote, "Jared Leto did some bad things. He sends Margot Robbie a black rat, which was still alive in a box." Leto explains to E! that he did this to break down boundaries, that he sent used condoms and anal beads to his co-stars because the Joker would never respect boundaries. Although Leto would later deny these things in an interview in 2017 with SiriusXM. In 2015, Contemptor.com released an article titled "Another Cosby?", a reminder that several women have accused Jared Leto of sexual assault. The article goes on to detail some dark Tumblr posts and allegations of assault by Leto. It reads, "When you begin to read stories of encounters with Leto from groupies of his band 30 Seconds to Mars, an alarming pattern emerges. It seems about half the stories state or imply that some aspect of sexual encounter was non-consensual on the woman's or girls. Several tell stories of him having sex and flirting with girls as young as 15. I'll give some examples below, but first I'm putting out a trigger warning. There's some nasty stuff here. Just to clarify, this is all based on victim's word. He's never been taken to court over any of this, but there are a lot of women saying similar things, and it all adds up to a disturbing picture. The most quoted groupie story found in the now famous Tumblr post is too explicit to quote at length, but the gist is what the victim wrote at the end. Quote, "I felt as though I was being raped, and not even a play rape. In his mind, it seemed like he thought he was fucking raping me. It was very odd." The victim explains that he would not stop even when she said that he was hurting her, and that at one point she even attempted to stop him by biting him. Another post on a groupie forum collects stories about encounters with Leto and his bandmates. Here are some of the more alarming excerpts. "I had sex with him when I was 15. I lost all respect for Jared Leto after I met too many teenage girls who have been approached by Jared in order to sleep with them. He's just another rock star who lets his ego get to his head so he could take advantage of young girls. He even hit on my 15-year-old best friend. He's no better than Roman Polanski in my eyes." From a long post by a woman who began having sex with Leto when she was 17, quote, "I can say Jared was my first for many sexual experiences and I wholeheartedly regret it nowadays. He was very pushy into coercing me to do sexual acts with him, and he was quite rough and forceful. Once he was unnecessarily rough, and when I told him it hurt, he didn't stop. He never did anything slowly or for my pleasure, and no, he never asked me if I was ever okay or comfortable with anything he wanted to do, simply because he is not the person to care. So having spent time with him, I couldn't say he's into S&M or that he's a sadist and enjoys hurting women. It just will always hurt whenever I see Jared Leto on TV or in a magazine. I just see the man who took advantage of my innocence and pressured me into things sexually that I'd never done and wasn't ready to do at the time." I will post links to all of the source material in this episode, so if you would like to go and take a look further into some of these allegations and first-hand testimonies, you'll have the option to do that. I've also included an Imgur account where pictures of alleged victims of Leto's have compiled photos detailing abuses that they endured. In 2017, there was also a Reddit thread titled "A Reminder that Several Women Have Accused Jared Leto of Sexual Assault," which generated a lot of discussion from users about their own experiences with Leto, or friends and loved ones of theirs who experienced some form of non-consensual act from Leto. In the same year Contempt released this article, Jared Leto and his band 30 Seconds to Mars hosted a 3-day-long summer camp in Miami. They called it Camp Mars and invited members of the echelon to take part. Included across the weekend were activities such as hiking, yoga, cooking classes, fire sing-alongs, and 2 band performances from 30 Seconds to Mars themselves. The Cut reported on the weekend saying, quote, "Camp, or the first seeds of a Child of Leto cult." Apparently, people paid around $900 for a ticket to the weekend, which only granted them entry. They were required to bring their own tents and provisions. All alcohol and drugs were apparently forbidden, and despite the strangeness of the event, it received positive feedback from fans and attendees, and ultimately would result in more Camp Mars festivals down the line. Also in 2017, Leto confirms on the Ellen DeGeneres show that he has slept with fans, and when asked by Ellen about explicit sexual lyrics about strangling people during sex, he replied, quote, "Everything else is about sex. Sex itself is about power." Around the rise of the hashtag #MeToo movement, Dylan Sprouse, one of the Sprouse twins of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody fame, tweeted an obscure question to Leto. It read, "Yo, at Jared Leto, now that you've slid into the DMs of every female model aged 18 to 25, what would you say your success rate is?" There appears to be no catalyst for the tweet that is known to the public, so speculation has gone into whether Leto has attempted to contact a friend of Sprouse's. The cryptic tweet was soon deleted, but not before it received a response from Guardians of the Galaxy director James Gunn saying, "He starts at 18 on the internet?" Which is even more interesting when you consider that Gunn tweeted in 2012, quote, "Driving home from Vegas trading stories about what a dick Jared Leto is." And Gunn would even apologize for a tweet at one point, after he did a live stream on Periscope where he spoke about Leto and his own reasons for disliking the man, which was later deleted, and no evidence of the video has been found since. Leto did not seem to respond to any of these public allegations, but the tweets did nothing to deter Leto from furthering his own agenda. In 2019, Camp Mars returned, this time taking over an entire private island in Croatia. There were different packages available for this festival, unlike the first, from your $995 for a tent space to an expensive $6,499 VIP package that came with a, quote, exclusive VIP experience with the band's frontman Jared Leto himself. The band performed live during the festival, calling these sessions the Church of Mars, treating them like preaching services. At one point, Leto conducted a so-called White Night march across the island, where Leto, dressed in full white robes, long hair and a beard, almost depicting what the Western world has come to identify with as the image of Jesus Christ, leads his followers across the island, who are also all dressed in white. I should note here, for anyone who hasn't heard of this before, White Nights are what Jim Jones conducted with his followers over in Guyana with the People's Temple. These were mass suicide drills to test the loyalty of his people on whether they would indeed follow through with such an act, which of course they tragically did on November the 18th of 1978. At the festival, there were again activities like yoga, music, hiking, as well as a tattoo parlor on site. On the 15th of August 2019, the band tweeted photos of the White Parade, titled, "Yes, this is a cult," to which fans responded things like, "Love you," and "This is a family," and "Yes, this is a cult, and you are the prophet," with very alienating language such as hashtag "You just don't understand," and hashtag "Echelon family," and even shared photos of wristbands made of red string with the words, "I will never forget." The words, "Yes, this is a cult," can be seen in the Closer to the Edge music video, and when questioned by journalists about this, Leto responded in 2009 saying, quote, "It's a joke, a response to journalists who say, 'You have such a cult following.'" Although this may seem to be like quirky self-awareness, I worry that hiding in plain sight might be working in potentially abusive environments, where Leto is bringing predominantly female fans, as seen in the Mars Island photos, to an isolated environment and offering intimate exclusive experiences with Leto himself. It sounds like a recipe for abuse, even without all of the other ongoing allegations from alleged victims on forums. Jenica Enoch, a fan and attendee of the festival, wrote a blog post titled "Escaping the Cult of Mars," that the vibe of the festival was good overall and that she'd had a positive experience. The festival was such a success again that there was supposed to be a 2020 Camp Mars that got cancelled due to COVID-19 and was rescheduled to August 20th to 23rd in 2021 in Croatia, increasing in price from basic packages at $1,649 to the VIP package coming in at $7,149, which would get you, quote, 2 full-length group concerts, activities with the band, accommodation and food, with the option of add-ons costing $2,491.66 for a private toilet, and each additional night on the island costing another $467. Eventually, the 2021 festival was also cancelled. Interestingly, I made a TikTok about this earlier this year where I included screenshots of the website and the price breakdown and the different packages that you could get for Camp Mars. But now you need a password to log into the website. And when I went looking on Reddit for potential answers, it turns out that there is a weird wormhole. A user informed others that the password is in all caps, and it is, "The universe is littered with the corpses of your failures." I tried this, but it didn't work. The post was made several months ago, but at the time, this password did seem to work for others who were sent a weird glitchy message about an evacuation before being signed out. Some found a video within the glitchy message called "Drowned Man," which after they watched, they fed back to the Reddit thread that this seemed to be a video suggesting the wormhole was purpose-made. Perhaps more cryptic stuff from Leto himself, who knows? KQED have an article from 2021 titled 30 Seconds to Mars, Jared Leto started a cult, because of course he did, detailing that the festival gave People's Temple vibes, that there is no racial diversity at all, and that the band have been fleecing fans since 2015, charging extortionate amounts for meet and greets in comparison to other artists. In 2021, a Twitter account named An Open Secret put out a thread that included details of all the alleged abuses of Leto to date, titled, quote, "Jared Leto has raped numerous underage teen girls." And in 2022, Jill Krajewski released a Twitter thread saying, quote, "We need to stop Jared Leto," which received 7,000 retweets and 55,000 likes. It regurgitated again a lot of what has already been covered here, but the comments bring about more instances of people claiming that they have had non-consensual run-ins with Jared Leto. He's been in the news for more recent events, including his on-screen peers calling him out for his so-called method acting, with Your Tango releasing an article on Morbius stating Leto played a scientist that was suffering from a blood disease that left the character weak in the 2022 movie Morbius. As with his other roles, Leto sought to get as close to the experience of the character that he portrayed as possible. The method actor insisted on using crutches to get around, just like his character did. While on the surface this might seem innocuous, somewhat uncomfortable for Leto maybe, it proved to be much more of a problem than anyone anticipated. Leto started to slowly crutch or limp even when going to the bathroom. The method actor's antics literally slowed down the entire production, and the director of the film reportedly had to make a deal with Leto to have him wheeled in a wheelchair when possible just to speed things up. While Leto's method acting may have contributed to many of his crowd-pleasing, award-winning performances over the years, his antics have been a bit more hit and miss with his castmates and productions. The accusations against Leto arose again recently during the 2022 Grammy Awards, when Leto presented Olivia Rodrigo with an award in April, with fans flooding to Twitter to say things like, "Olivia, no. Olivia, run. Jared looks like Jesus. Delete this picture, it was taken without consent. Security, and someone call the church, and get away from her," which caused another round of articles to be released regarding allegations against Jared Leto. The Echelon call him Jesus, and he calls the Echelon family. Perhaps no legal action has been taken by alleged victims of Leto's, and perhaps many of this stuff we have covered is not nefarious in nature. Perhaps a weekend on an isolated island is not for untoward reasons. Perhaps Cosby, Weinstein, Savile, Spacey, R. Kelly, and Epstein are all names that we should keep in mind when looking at the abuse of power and lack of action, accountability, and prevention amongst celebrity circles. And again, I apologise for any upset caused by parts 1 and 2 of this coverage. This has been part 3 of the Jared Leto series. I'm your speaker Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast.